Jerry Jones just came out and said something that should have every Cowboys fan either jumping out of their seat or rolling their eyes so hard they can see yesterday. And honestly, I'm somewhere in between because the man literally told us he's ready to bust the budget this offseason and go more aggressive than we've seen in years. But before we dive into whether this is real or just another empty promise from the Jones family, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're bringing you every single Cowboys update the moment it happens. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming in the next few weeks. So here's the deal. Jerry was doing his usual media tour during Pro Bowl week and all the NFL honors festivities. And he started talking about how they made moves last year that actually helped the team. And then he said something that caught everyone's attention. When he mentioned that busting the budget would mean going even further than what they did in 2025. Now let me translate the Jerry speak for you real quick, because we all know the man loves to talk in circles without actually saying anything concrete. But what he's essentially hinting at is that the front office might actually be willing to spend some real money this time around, instead of doing their usual bargain bin shopping routine that we've all gotten way too familiar with over the past decade. The question every single person in Cowboys Nation is asking right now is simple. Is this just Jerry doing what Jerry does best, which is selling hope without delivering results? Or are we actually about to witness a legitimate shift in how this organization operates when it comes to building a championship roster? Think about it for a second. We've heard this song and dance before, right? Remember when Jerry said they were all in just a couple years back, and then proceeded to do absolutely nothing significant in free agency, while other teams were out there making splash moves and actually trying to win now? The Cowboys have built a reputation over the last 10 years as the most conservative big-market team in the entire NFL. And that's not an exaggeration. That's just facts. While teams like the Rams were trading future picks and signing big-name free agents to go win a Super Bowl, while the Eagles were being aggressive and building rosters that could compete at the highest level, Dallas was sitting back talking about fiscal responsibility and worrying about what their salary cap situation would look like in 2031, when they should have been focused on maximizing the window they have right now with Dak Prescott. Here's what nobody is talking about, though. The Cowboys actually did change their approach slightly last offseason. And I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. They brought in more free agents than usual. They made some trades, including the massive Trey Lance move and the Jonathan Mingo experiment. And they were at least more active than we've seen them be in recent memory. But here's the thing. That's still not even close to what other competitive organizations do on a regular basis. When Jerry talks about busting the budget, what he probably means is signing a guy to a 3-year, $12 million deal and thinking he just made a franchise-altering move, when in reality, that's just normal business for most teams. The real test of whether this is legitimate or not comes down to a few key decisions they're about to make. And the first one is staring them right in the face. What are they going to do with Micah Parsons? Now, history tells us exactly what's going to happen here. They're going to drag this thing out for months. They'll have some conversations at the combine that go nowhere. They'll slap the franchise tag on him at the last minute, and then they'll let it linger all the way until mid-July when the extension deadline hits. And maybe, just maybe, they'll get something done right before time runs out. That's been the Dallas Cowboys playbook for every major contract negotiation. And it's exhausting to watch. But here's the crazy part. If Jerry actually wants to prove he's serious about busting the budget, the smartest move, financially, would be to get Micah's extension done early, because the franchise tag for him is going to be somewhere around $28 to almost $29 million. And that's a massive cap hit that gives you zero flexibility. If they do a long-term extension, even if they're paying him $33 or $34 million per year, that first-year cap hit could be half of what the tag would cost, which means they'd have an extra $14 or $15 million to play with this year. That's real money that could be used to actually improve the roster. But that would require the Jones family to do something they've never been comfortable doing, which is getting ahead of a problem instead of waiting until it becomes a crisis. Would you pay Micah early or wait it out? Because I'm telling you right now, the smart move is obvious. But whether they actually do it is a whole different conversation. The second way Jerry can prove this isn't just talk is by actually going out and spending real money in free agency. And I'm not talking about signing a veteran on a one-year prove-it deal for $4 million. I'm talking about giving out a contract that makes the rest of the league go, okay, Dallas is actually serious this time. Let me give you some context that's going to blow your mind. Since 2016, which is almost 10 years ago now, the largest per-year contract the Cowboys have given to a free agent is $6.1 million to Gerald McCoy. And that deal had so many outs built into it that he barely even counted. Brandon Carr's deal back in the day was the last time they gave significant guaranteed money to an outside free agent. And we're talking about ancient history at this point. Every Super Bowl winner in recent memory has given out more guaranteed money to a single free agent in the year they won than the Cowboys have given out combined over the last decade. And that's not hyperbole. That's a legitimate stat that should embarrass this entire front office. The salary cap has literally doubled from $143 million to over $300 million in that time frame. And Dallas is still handing out the same $6 million contracts like it's 2015. Meanwhile, guys who should be hitting free agency are getting tagged or extended by their teams because there's so much money available now that organizations can afford to keep their own players. Which means the free agent market isn't as loaded as it used to be. But that doesn't mean there aren't impact players available if you're willing to pay them. If Jerry wants to bust the budget for real, go give somebody a 3-year, $30 million deal. Go offer a premier edge rusher or a shutdown corner, the kind of money that actually moves the needle. Stop acting like this is a mid-market franchise when you're literally the most valuable sports organization on the planet. Over or under $6.5 million for the biggest free agent contract Dallas hands out this year. What are you taking? I'm hammering the under all day until they prove me wrong. The third thing they could do is get more aggressive in the trade market. And look, they actually did some of this last year, with mixed results at best. The Trey Lance trade was a head-scratcher. The Jonathan Mingo move didn't work out. But the Eric Kendricks signing and some of the smaller moves showed they were at least trying to think outside their normal box. Here's the reality. With the cap continuing to go up every single year, and more teams keeping their star players instead of letting them walk, trades are becoming a more viable path to acquiring elite talent. If you can find a team that has a star player they can't afford to keep, or a situation where a guy wants out, use your draft capital to go get him and then pay him what he's worth. The Rams did this and won a Super Bowl. The Niners have been doing this for years. Even teams like the Dolphins made the Tyreek Hill trade and immediately became more dangerous. Dallas has draft picks. They have cap space if they actually create it, and they have the ability to make these kinds of moves if they wanted to. But do they have the guts to pull the trigger? That's the question. And the crazy part is they actually proved with the Trayvon Williams trade a few years back that when they do make a bold move, it can work out. But then they go right back to being conservative instead of building on that success. If there's a superstar linebacker or pass rusher or defensive back available via trade this offseason, Dallas needs to be making calls and actually putting real offers on the table instead of lowballing teams and acting surprised when it doesn't work out. But here's what really needs to happen for any of this to matter. The entire philosophy of this organization has to change from top to bottom. Jerry Jones is 82 years old, and he's been running this team basically the same way for 3 decades, so expecting him to completely change his approach overnight might be asking for a miracle. But he did say something recently that caught my attention. He talked about looking in the mirror and evaluating whether his way of doing things is actually working. And he admitted that if he doesn't change, then he's not going to be successful. That's a shocking level of self-awareness from Jerry, and honestly, I almost fell out of my chair when I heard it. But the question is whether that self-awareness actually leads to real change, or if it's just more talk. The one piece of evidence that makes me think maybe something is different this time is the coaching staff changes they made. Hiring Brian Schottenheimer as head coach was one thing, but the way they went about hiring coordinators and position coaches was completely different from anything we've seen from this organization in years. They actually did real extensive searches. They brought in candidates that the Jones family probably had never even heard of before, and they let football people make football decisions, at least on the coaching side. That's a huge departure from the old way of doing things, where Jerry would just promote from within or hire one of his buddies. And it gives me a tiny sliver of hope that maybe the culture is starting to shift. But let me be crystal clear. Hiring some new assistant coaches is just step one of about 100 steps this organization needs to take if they actually want to compete for championships. You know what really frustrates me about all this? The Cowboys act like they're some small market team that has to be careful with every penny, when the reality is they print more money than almost any franchise in sports. They don't have an excuse for not being aggressive. They don't have a reason to pinch pennies and worry about the cap situation 5 years from now, when they have a franchise quarterback in his prime, elite weapons on offense, and pieces on defense that can win if you surround them with more talent. The window is closing, whether Jerry wants to admit it or not. Dak isn't getting younger. CeeDee Lamb is on a massive contract. Micah needs to get paid. And if you waste another 2 or 3 years being conservative and hoping you can draft your way to a championship, you're going to wake up one day and realize the window slammed shut, and you've got nothing to show for it. Look at what happened to the Seahawks after their Super Bowl runs. Look at what the Saints are dealing with after wasting the end of Drew Brees' career. Look at the Packers, who wasted years of Aaron Rodgers only getting 1 ring when they should have had 3 or 4. Is that what Dallas wants? Because that's exactly where they're headed if they don't change course right now. And here's the part that should scare every Cowboys fan. We've watched Philadelphia go to a Super Bowl. We've watched teams like Detroit completely rebuild and become legitimate contenders in a short window. We've watched the Commanders with a rookie quarterback make it further in the playoffs than Dallas has in decades. And the common thread with all those teams is they weren't afraid to be aggressive when the opportunity was there. The Eagles traded for A.J. Brown. They paid guys in free agency. They built through the draft, but they also supplemented with veteran talent that could win now. The Lions went out and got Jared Goff when people thought he was done. They drafted incredibly well. And they created a culture of winning instead of just talking about it. What has Dallas done? They've talked about being close. They've moral victoried themselves into thinking 12-win seasons matter when they can't win a playoff game that actually means something. And they've convinced themselves that doing things the quote-unquote right way is somehow noble, when all it really means is they're too scared to take risks. You want to bust the budget, Jerry? Then actually do it. Pay Micah Parsons before the season starts and free up cap space. Go sign a premier free agent to a deal that makes headlines. Explore trades for impact players, even if it costs you draft capital. And most importantly, stop acting like you're going to be able to run this team forever, because Father Time is undefeated. And if you don't win now, you're never going to. I'm not saying mortgage the entire future and go full Rams mode where you have no first-round picks for 3 years. But I am saying you need to find a middle ground between being reckless and being so conservative that you're essentially playing not to lose instead of playing to win. The fan base is tired of the same old routine. We're exhausted from hearing about moral victories and being close. We don't want to hear about how the team is built to compete for the next decade when they haven't proven they can compete for a championship right now. If Jerry is serious about busting the budget, then the proof is going to come in the next few months with how they handle Micah's contract, what they do in free agency, and whether they're willing to make moves that might be uncomfortable but necessary. I want to believe that the coaching changes are a sign of real philosophical shift in this organization. I want to think that Jerry's comments about self-evaluation and changing his ways are genuine and not just lip service. But until I see actual results, I'm going to remain skeptical. Because we've been down this road too many times before. The Cowboys have all the resources in the world. They have a massive fan base that would support aggressive moves to win now. And they have a roster that's talented enough to compete if they just add the right pieces around it. So the ball is in Jerry's court. He can either back up his words with actions and prove that this time is different, or he can do what he's done for the past decade, which is talk a big game and then go sign a couple of veterans to cheap one-year deals and act like he's done something special.
What do you think, Cowboys Nation? Is Jerry actually going to bust the budget this offseason? Or is this just more of the same empty promises we've heard before? Do you want them to pay Micah early and create cap space? Or do you think they should wait and use the franchise tag? What free agents should Dallas be targeting if they're really serious about winning now? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to know where you stand on this. And if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that right now because we're going to be all over free agency when it starts, and you're going to want to be here for every signing, every rumor, and every move the Cowboys make or don't make. This is Cowboys Live News, and I'll catch you in the next one. Let's hope Jerry actually means what he says this time, because this fan base deserves better than moral victories and early playoff exits.